Hello, welcome to her heart. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. My mother told me to figure it out while I was lying in a hospital bed with a broken femur, a dislocated shoulder, and a 7-week-old baby at home who needed me. Those were her exact words. Figure it out. She said this while standing in a boarding line for a 12-day spa cruise to the Bahamas. I could hear the ship's horn in the background. I could hear champagne glasses clinking. I could hear my mother choosing a vacation over her own daughter and her grandchild without a second of doubt. My name is Mariana Jenkins. I am 31 years old, and until October 3rd of last year, I truly believed that family meant something. I believed blood was thicker than water. I believed that when you really needed your mother, she would be there. I was wrong about all of it. Let me take you back to that Tuesday afternoon. October 3rd at 2:47 p.m. I was driving home from the veterinary clinic where I work as a billing specialist in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I left work early because my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was watching my 7-week-old daughter, Nora, and she had a dentist appointment at 5 p.m. My husband, Theo, was 47 minutes away in Elizabethtown, installing a new AC unit for a commercial building. The plan was simple: pick up Nora, start dinner, and wait for Theo to come home. That plan ended when I reached the intersection of Scottsville Road and Campbell Lane. I never saw the FedEx truck. I only heard it. The loud roar of an engine that should not have been there, because my light was green. I know it was green. Then everything turned into glass, metal, and spinning chaos. The truck hit my driver's side door at over 40 miles an hour. My small 2014 Ford Focus with 127,000 miles didn't stand a chance. Neither did I. I woke up in an ambulance. The pain was unlike anything I had ever felt before. It was a white-hot fire shooting from my hip down to my knee. My shoulder felt wrong, like it was twisted out of place. Every breath felt like a knife cutting between my ribs. The paramedic kept telling me to stay calm and not to move. He said help was coming. All I could think about was Nora, my baby, and who was watching her. They took me to the medical center in Bowling Green, room 412. I will never forget that number. I had a fractured right femur that would need surgery, a dislocated left shoulder, and 3 cracked ribs. The doctor explained everything slowly and professionally, but all I heard was this: 6 to 8 weeks of recovery, maybe longer. I would not be able to care for an infant by myself. Called Theo first. He answered on the second ring. When I told him what happened, his voice broke in a way I had never heard before. He said he was coming. He would figure out work. He told me to just hold on. Theo arrived at the hospital by 5:15 p.m., which meant he drove that 47-minute trip in about 35. He had already picked up Nora from Mrs. Patterson. He was holding our daughter in one arm and my hand in the other. He looked like he hadn't taken a breath since my call. Theo could only take 5 days off work. That was the maximum. It was unpaid because HVAC technicians don't get generous leave policies. If he missed more than a week, his company would give his jobs to someone else. Our mortgage payment was due on the 15th. $1,340 that we could not miss without serious consequences. We had maybe $4,000 in savings. The numbers already didn't work. And I hadn't even had surgery yet. That's when I called my mother. Her name is Darlene Pritchard. She is 59 years old, remarried to a man named Hank who treats her like a queen. She lives in a beautiful 4-bedroom house in Louisville that she constantly photographed for Facebook. My mother, the same woman I had sent $400 to every month for the past 3 years to help pay her property taxes. The same mother I gave $2,800 to just 3 months earlier for an emergency roof repair she promised to pay back by September. She answered on the 5th ring. I could tell right away that she was somewhere busy and loud. There was music. People were talking. Clearly sounded like a vacation. I explained everything. The accident, my injuries, the surgery I needed, the baby I couldn't care for, and the husband who could only take 5 days off work. I asked her, honestly begged her, to come to Bowling Green for a week or 2. Just until I could walk again. Just until I could hold my own daughter without help. Her response was a sigh. an actual loud, annoyed sigh. She told me she was in Miami and about to board the Serenity of the Seas for a cruise she had booked 8 months earlier. It was a spa cruise, 12 days in the Bahamas with Hank. She said she couldn't possibly cancel now. Did I even know how much those tickets cost? Did I know how long she had been looking forward to this? I said, "Mom, I can't walk. Have a newborn. I need help." That's when she said the words that destroyed whatever was left of our relationship. "Mariana, your sister Sloane never puts me in these situations. Figure it out. I've had this cruise booked for 8 months. Then she said she had to go. They were calling her boarding group. And she hung up. I lay there in the hospital bed with a morphine drip in my arm and my leg in traction, staring at the ceiling. There was a water stain on the tile directly above me. I stared at it for 4 hours before surgery. It was shaped exactly like my mother's face, disappointed, dismissive, looking down at me. I'm not saying it was a sign, but I'm not saying it wasn't either. While I was in surgery, having a metal rod placed into my femur, my mother was sipping champagne on a deck chair. While I was learning how to use a bedpan because I couldn't walk to the bathroom, my mother was enjoying a seaweed wrap at the ship's spa. While my husband was trying to be a new father, a full-time employee, and a caregiver to his injured wife all at once, sleeping maybe 3 hours a night, my mother was posting photos on Facebook. The captions said things like, "Self-care isn't selfish," and "treating myself because I deserve it." I saw those posts from my hospital bed. Each one felt like a small knife. But they also made something very clear, something I had been refusing to admit for years. I thought about the $400 a month I had been sending her. For 3 years. That's $14,400. I thought about the $2,800 for the roof she never paid back. I thought about last Christmas, when I bought her a cashmere sweater and she gave me a candle from HomeGoods, with a clearance sticker still on the bottom. I thought about my wedding, which she complained was too far to drive to, even though it was only 2 hours away. Then I thought about my sister, Sloane, the sister who got a brand new Kia Sportage last year as a gift from our mother. Meanwhile, I was still driving a car with 127,000 miles, a car that had just been destroyed by a delivery truck. Your sister Sloane never puts me in these situations. Sloane, who has never kept a job longer than 6 months in her entire 28 years of life. Sloane, who borrowed $15,000 from our mother and never paid back a single cent. Sloane, who didn't come to my wedding because she said she had a migraine. That's Sloane. That's the standard of good behavior. That's what I'm expected to live up to. Something shifted inside me that night. Not broken, shifted. Like a bone finally settling into a new place. Position. Different. Permanent. I didn't know yet what I was going to do about it, but lying in that hospital bed, I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the daughter who always figured it out. I was done fixing problems for people who couldn't even bother to show up. Before we continue, please hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Thank you so much for being here. Now, where was I? I was lying in a hospital bed, doing math that didn't work, trying to figure out how to care for a 7-week-old baby when I couldn't even stand up to use the bathroom. Theo took his 5 days of unpaid leave. 5 days. That's all we had before real life came crashing back. Our savings account had $4,200 in it. The mortgage was $1,340. That left us with $2,860 to survive on until I could work again, which the doctor said would take at least 6 to 8 weeks. More numbers kept me awake at night. A night nurse costs money. In Bowling Green, Kentucky, in October of last year, a qualified night nurse cost $28 an hour. If I needed help from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., 10 hours, that was $280 a night. Almost $2,000 a week just so I wouldn't drop my baby, because I couldn't lift her with a dislocated shoulder and couldn't stand with a fractured femur. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I found Gladys Horton on care.com. I was scrolling with my one good arm while the pain medication made the screen blur. Gladys was 67 years old, a retired NICU nurse from Elizabethtown. Her profile said she specialized in emergency situations and difficult families. I didn't realize yet how perfect that description was. She started the very next night. Another $280 gone. I canceled our anniversary dinner reservation. Theo's birthday was coming up in November and I had already bought him a new drill set, the cordless kind he had wanted for a year. I returned it and got $173 back. Then I did something that hurt more than my shoulder. I sold my grandmother's pearl earrings on Facebook Marketplace. A woman from Nashville drove up to buy them. She handed me $180 in cash. Those earrings were the only thing I had left from my grandmother, the woman who truly loved me, who always showed up when I needed her, and who died when I was 19. $180. That's what I was doing while my mother was sitting at the captain's table dinner, posting photos with the caption, "Living my best life with my love." Hank was beside her, smiling awkwardly in a blazer. It was day 4 in the hospital when I tried one last thing. Called my sister. Sloane answered like I had interrupted something important. I could hear reality TV playing in the background. I explained everything in the shortest way possible, just the basics. Car accident. Broken leg. Needed help with the baby. Mom was on a cruise. Sloane laughed. She actually laughed. A small, sharp sound of disbelief, like I had told her a joke. She said she wasn't really a baby person. She said, "I knew that about her." Then she added, "Besides, she's going through something right now and really needs to focus on herself." Going through something. I asked what she meant. Tyler had broken up with her. Tyler, the 24-year-old who worked at a vape shop called Cloud9. They had been together for 2 months, maybe 3. Sloane talked about it like it was a death in the family. She said she couldn't possibly help take care of an infant right now. Not with everything she was dealing with. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask if she knew what I was dealing with. I wanted to remind her that I drove 3 hours to help her move apartments last year, even though I was 6 months pregnant and my back was killing me. I wanted to tell her that Tyler from the vape shop was not worth the mascara she was probably crying into her pillow over. I wanted to say all of it. But I didn't. I just said okay and hung up. Sloane's relationship with Tyler lasted exactly 63 days. I know this because she posted their anniversary on Instagram, and then posted their breakup on the same account 2 months later. That's about how long his employee discount lasted too. I'm not saying my sister is shallow, but she cried harder when the discount ended than when he did. Day 6. Theo went back to work. He didn't want to. I could see it on his face, this broken, guilty look like he was leaving me behind. But we had already done the math together, sitting in that hospital room with a calculator and a spreadsheet. There was no version of this where he stayed home and we kept the house. So he kissed me goodbye. He kissed Nora goodbye. Then he drove to Elizabethtown to fix rich people's air conditioning while I lay in bed watching our savings disappear. Day 8, I was transferred to a rehabilitation facility. Still in Bowling Green. Just a different building with different ceiling tiles to stare at. My physical therapist was a cheerful guy named Derek who seemed personally offended by my broken femur. He kept saying things like, "We're going to get you walking again," and "You're stronger than you think." Honestly, his optimism was exhausting, but I appreciated it. That's when Hank called. Hank Bellwether, my mother's husband of 12 years. He was a retired regional manager for a trucking company and now did consulting work from home. He was 62 years old. Quiet. Polite. The kind of man who holds doors open and calls waitresses, "ma'am." I had always liked Hank, even though I barely knew him. He stayed out of family drama. He let my mother handle her daughters. The cruise had ended. They were back in Louisville when Hank saw something on Facebook. My Aunt Colleen had made a post about the accident, asking people to pray for my recovery. Hank sounded confused. He also sounded embarrassed. He said Darlene had told him I was in a minor fender bender, that I had a little whiplash and nothing more. She told him I was fine. He had no idea about the surgery, the fractured femur, or the weeks of recovery ahead of me. He offered to drive down that same day. It was only a 2-hour trip. He said he could be there by dinner. I told him no, and I meant it. Not because I was being proud, but because Hank wasn't the one who owed me anything. He didn't know the truth about his wife, and I wasn't going to make him clean up her mess. That wouldn't be fair to either of us. I had Gladys. I was managing. But I thanked him, and I truly meant that. After we hung up, I thought about what he had said. Darlene told him it was a minor fender bender. She didn't just refuse to help me. She lied to her husband so he wouldn't know she had refused. She created an entirely different version of reality where I was fine, where staying on the cruise made sense, and where she wasn't the villain. That was new information. And it changed everything. Then the family grapevine kicked in. My Aunt Colleen, my mother's older sister, called to check on me. She is 63, widowed, and lives in Lexington. She has always been the quiet one in the family. The peacekeeper. The one who smooths things over. But that day her voice sounded different. There was an edge I had never heard before. She told me what my mother had been saying to the rest of the family. That I exaggerated my injuries for attention. That I had a husband, so she didn't understand why I expected her to drop everything. That some people just love to play the victim. I listened. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. She told me she needed to talk to me in person. She said there were things I needed to know. Things she should have told me years ago. She apologized for waiting so long. 2 days later, she showed up at the rehab facility with a tuna casserole and a manila folder filled with documents. That was the moment when everything I thought I knew about my family started to fall apart. Aunt Colleen sat in the plastic chair beside my bed and didn't touch the casserole. She just looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Guilty, sad, and determined all at the same time. She began by apologizing. She said she should have told me the truth 3 years earlier, when it first happened. She admitted she had been a coward. She said my mother had threatened her, and she believed that threat. She said she had hated herself for staying quiet ever since. At the time, I didn't understand what she was talking about. Not yet. Colleen asked me to think back to March 2021, the month my father died. Raymond Pritchard, 61 years old. A heart attack in his sleep. Gone before anyone could say goodbye. Course I remembered. I remembered the funeral. I remembered my mother taking control of everything. The arrangements, the paperwork, the estate. I remembered feeling grateful that someone was handling it all, because I was too deep in grief to function. What I didn't remember was asking about money. I had been too devastated to think about inheritance. But Colleen remembered. She remembered because she had seen the life insurance policy years earlier. My father had shown it to her back when he and my mother were still married. He wanted Colleen to know just in case. Just in case Darlene tried something. That's what he said. Just in case Darlene tried something. The policy was worth $80,000, split equally between his 2 daughters. $40,000 to me, $40,000 to Sloan. Not to Darlene. Plus, his children. That was his wish. Colleen watched me process this. She could see the math happening behind my eyes. I never received $40,000. I never received anything. Months after the funeral, I had asked my mother about it. Carefully, gently, trying not to seem greedy. She told me that the funeral expenses had used up everything. There was nothing left. I believed her. Why wouldn't I believe my own mother? The funeral cost $8,500. I knew because I had helped plan it. I had been there when Darlene chose the casket, the flowers, and the reception hall. I had even contributed $2,000 of my own money because Darlene said she was overwhelmed and stressed and asked if I could help. $8,500. Not $40,000. Not even close. Colleen reached into the manila folder and pulled out the documents she had been keeping for 3 years. The life insurance policy. Clear as day. Beneficiary 1. Mariana Jenkins, $40,000. Beneficiary 2. Sloan Pritchard, $40,000. Policy number, insurance company, payout terms. Everything official, everything documented. My father had given these copies to Colleen the year before he died. He said he didn't trust Darlene with money. He wanted someone outside the situation to know the truth. He said that if anything ever seemed wrong after he was gone, Colleen should tell his daughters. Colleen tried. 3 years ago after the funeral, she asked Darlene about the insurance payout, just casually, just checking. Darlene's response was not casual at all. She pulled Colleen aside at a family barbecue and told her very clearly that if she kept asking questions, she wouldn't be welcome at family events anymore. Ever. She would be cut off, erased, left alone. For a 63-year-old widow whose entire social life revolved around family gatherings, that threat worked. Colleen stayed quiet. She hated herself for it, but she stayed quiet until now. Until she saw what happened with my accident. Until she realized that her silence had allowed Darlene to keep hurting me, to keep taking from me. And she couldn't live with that anymore. I asked the obvious question. If Sloan and I were each supposed to get $40,000, and Sloan definitely got hers, because she bought a used car 6 months after Dad died and bragged about paying cash, then where was my $40,000? Colleen didn't know for certain, but she had a guess. And it involved something Darlene had said at Christmas 2 years earlier. Family party. Darlene's house. Too much wine. Colleen was helping clean up the kitchen when Darlene got chatty in that loose, unguarded way drunk people sometimes do. She started talking about money, about security, about how every smart woman needs something her husband doesn't know about. She told Colleen she had a secret account, an emergency fund. She called it rainy day money. Hank handles everything else, she said. But this is mine. This is my safety net. At the time, Colleen thought it was just tipsy bragging. Rich people nonsense. But now, sitting in my hospital room, the pieces fit together in an ugly way. My father's money, my inheritance. Hidden in an account Darlene's own husband didn't even know existed. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not surprise exactly. More like confirmation. Like I had always known something was wrong. And now I finally had proof. But Colleen wasn't done. She had one more piece of the puzzle. For years, Darlene had been complaining to her about Sloan's spending. The credit cards, the shopping, the debt that just kept growing. $23,000 across 4 cards. Last Colleen heard, Sloan couldn't even make the minimum payments. She didn't have the income, so someone else was paying them for her. Darlene. Every month. $400 to $500. Just to keep Sloan's credit from collapsing completely. 2 years ago, Darlene even asked Colleen for a loan. She said it was to help Sloan with her debt, just temporarily, until Sloan got back on her feet. Colleen refused. She didn't have that kind of money. And besides, she knew Sloan would never get back on her feet as long as someone kept bailing her out every time she fell. Shortly after Colleen refused that loan, I started sending my mother $400 a month for property taxes. The timing matched. The amounts matched. I wasn't helping my mother pay her taxes. I was paying my sister's credit card bills, without knowing it. $14,400 over 3 years, plus the $2,800 for the fake roof repair, plus my stolen inheritance. $31,500 after funeral expenses. $48,700. That's what my mother had taken from me. Through lies, manipulation, and outright theft. Nearly $50,000. And I had thanked her for the privilege of giving it. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but the tears wouldn't come. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe I was too drugged. Or maybe some part of me had always known. And the confirmation was almost a relief. At least now I wasn't crazy. At least now I knew I wasn't imagining the imbalance, the unfairness, the constant feeling that I was giving and getting nothing back. Colleen held my hand. She said she was sorry over and over. She said she should have told me sooner. Said our father would be so disappointed in Darlene, and so proud of me for being nothing like her. I asked Colleen to send me the insurance documents. Official copies, certified mail. I gave her the address of the rehab facility. She said they would arrive within the week. When she left, she hugged me carefully, avoiding my bad shoulder, and said something I'll never forget. Your grandmother always said Darlene peaked in high school, Homecoming Court 1983. It's been 40 years of downhill skiing without the mountains. I laughed. It hurt my ribs, but I laughed anyway. Alone in that room, staring at the ceiling. Different tiles, same feeling. I thought about what I was going to do. My first instinct was confrontation. Blow it all up. Call my mother. Scream at her. Demand answers. Let the whole family know what she had done. But that was what the old Mariana would have done. The Mariana who figured it out. Who kept the peace. Who let herself be used because fighting back seemed too hard. I wasn't that person anymore. The accident had broken something in me, yes, but it had also broken something loose. Some barrier I had built to protect myself from seeing the truth about my own family. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I just wanted what was mine. And I was going to get it. The documents arrived on October 24th, certified mail, just like Colleen promised. I held them in my hands. Proof of my father's wishes. Proof of my mother's betrayal. And I started to plan. Not a scene. Not a confrontation. Something quieter. Something smarter. Something my mother wouldn't see coming until it was already too late. October 25th. 3 weeks and 1 day after the accident that changed everything. Came home. Not walking exactly. More like shuffling with a walker. My right leg still refusing to cooperate the way legs are supposed to. Vo had rearranged the living room so I could get from the couch to the bathroom without having to navigate around furniture. He had set up a little station next to the sofa. Phone charger, water bottle, pain medication, baby monitor, laptop, everything I needed within arm's reach. Gladys had transitioned from coming every night to coming only as needed. We couldn't really afford her anymore, but she insisted on checking in twice a week anyway. She said it was to see Nora's progress. I think it was really to make sure I hadn't lost my mind. Fair concern, honestly. I was spending a lot of time staring at spreadsheets. The certified documents from Aunt Colleen sat in a folder on my coffee table. I had read them probably 40 times by now. Policy number LI 7834521. State Farm Life Insurance. Issued to Raymond Pritchard. Beneficiaries: Mariana Jenkins, $40,000. Sloan Pritchard, $40,000. Clear as day. Black and white. Undeniable. I called State Farm on October 27th. I gave them my father's information, the policy number, and my own details as a listed beneficiary. The customer service representative was polite, professional, and confirmed everything Aunt Colleen had told me. Both checks had been issued in April 2021. Both checks had been cashed. The estate had been settled. As far as State Farm was concerned, everyone had received their money. Everyone except me. I started building my case. Not for court. I wasn't there yet. But I needed to see the full picture laid out in front of me. So I created a spreadsheet. That's what billing specialists do when the world stops making sense. Column A, what I gave. Column B, what I received. Column C, what was stolen. 3 years of bank statements showing the $400 monthly transfers to my mother's account. 48 payments. $14,400. I told myself it was for property taxes. I told myself I was helping my mother keep her home. The home she owned outright after marrying Hank. The home that didn't really have property tax problems because Hank handled all the finances and would never let a bill go unpaid. I had been paying my sister's credit card minimums for 3 years, without knowing it. Next line. July 2024. $2,800 emergency roof repair. The text messages were still on my phone. My mother swearing she'd pay me back by September. Promising it was just temporary. Thanking me for being such a good daughter. September came and went. No money. No mention of it. I didn't bring it up because I didn't want to seem petty. I thought asking for my own money back would be petty. Final line. Inheritance. $40,000 minus $8,500 for funeral expenses. And I had contributed $2,000 of that myself. So really the math should be different, but I was trying to be fair. $31,500. Money my father specifically wanted me to have. Money that was supposed to help me build a life, buy a house, raise a family. Total, $48,700. I looked at that number for a long time. Nearly $50,000. That was a down payment on a house. That was 4 years of daycare for Nora. That was a safety net, cushion, future. And my mother had taken it, all while smiling at me across Thanksgiving tables, accepting my birthday cards, and telling me she loved me. But here's the thing. I didn't want to go to war over $48,700. I didn't want lawyers. I didn't want courtrooms. I didn't want family drama that would drag on for years. I didn't want to become the villain in my mother's story, the ungrateful daughter who sued her own family. I wanted one thing, the inheritance. $31,500. My father's money, left to me, stolen by my mother. That was clean. That was documented. That was mine by every legal and moral standard that existed. The monthly payments, the roof repair, those were technically gifts. I had given them willingly, even if I had given them under false pretenses. A lawyer would tell me they'd be hard to recover. My mother could argue she had needed the help, that I had offered freely, that I couldn't take back a gift just because I was angry now. But the inheritance was different. That was theft. That was fraud. That was provable. So I made a decision. One number. One demand. No wiggle room. I could have thrown everything at her. The roof, the monthly payments, all of it. But I know my mother. Give her too many things to argue about, and she'll argue forever. She'll muddy the waters until nobody remembers what they were fighting about in the first place. That's her specialty. That's how she survived this long. One number. $31,500. Now I just needed the right moment. November 1st. For the first time in 3 years, I did not send my mother $400. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain. I just didn't do it. The automatic transfer I had set up years ago, cancelled, took about 30 seconds. 3 years of payments, ended with a few taps on my phone. I figured it would take her a while to notice. My mother isn't the type to check her bank account every day. She'd assume it was a delay, a glitch, a holiday slowdown. She'd wait. Her pride wouldn't let her ask directly. Well, not at first. She'd convince herself there was a reasonable explanation that didn't involve her daughter finally wising up. November 8th. 5 weeks after the accident. I walked into my physical therapy appointment using a cane instead of a walker. Derek, my therapist, actually applauded. He said I was ahead of schedule, that most femur fractures don't heal this fast, and asked what was motivating me. I told him, revenge is excellent cardio. He laughed. I wasn't joking. That same week I went back to work part-time. 4 hours a day at the veterinary clinic, sitting at my desk processing invoices and insurance claims. My coworkers had sent flowers while I was in the hospital, a beautiful arrangement with a card signed by everyone. They had also covered my shifts without complaint and saved all my files exactly the way I left them. That's what normal people do when someone they care about gets hurt. They help. They show up. They don't board cruise ships. November 12th. My phone rang. Sloane's name on the screen. I hadn't talked to my sister since the hospital, when she told me she wasn't a baby person and hung up on me. I answered anyway, curious what could possibly motivate her to call. Turns out she needed $500. Her credit card got declined at Nordstrom Rack, and she was so embarrassed. Could I just help her out this once? She'd totally pay me back. For a moment I didn't say anything. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, thinking about the last 3 years. Every time I had said yes. Every time I had figured it out. Every time I had been the responsible one so Sloane could be the mess and our mother could play the hero, cleaning up after her. I said, no. Not with anger. Not with a lecture. No. I can't do that right now. Sloane's voice changed instantly. Disbelief, then irritation. Seriously. It's just $500. You're being ridiculous. No silence. Then she hung. I sat there with my phone in my hand, heart pounding like I had just run a marathon instead of saying a 2-letter word. My whole life I had been trained to say yes. Yes to my mother. Yes to my sister. Yes to anyone who needed me, regardless of whether they were ever there when I needed them. That single no felt like breaking a bone and setting it correctly all at once. It hurt, and it was exactly what needed to happen. Now I waited. Darlene would call eventually. That $400 was part of her budget. She was counting on it. And when she realized it wasn't coming, she'd want to know why. When she called, I'd be ready. November 19th, 7:47 p.m. Theo was in the bathroom giving Nora her evening bath. I could hear splashing, his voice making silly sounds. Nora's little gurgling laughs. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. A house. Family. Or life. My phone rang. I looked at the screen and felt nothing. No fear. No anger. No dread. Just a calm, cold clarity. Like I had been preparing for this moment without realizing it. Darlene Pritchard. Mom, I answered. Her voice was warm. Too warm. That particular tone she uses when she wants something but doesn't want to admit she wants it. She asked how I was feeling. How the recovery was going. How that precious baby girl was. First time she had asked about Nora since before the accident. First time she had called at all since that day in the boarding line, when she told me to figure it out. I gave short answers. Fine. Better. Growing fast. We made small talk for about 3 minutes. The weather in Louisville. Hank's consulting project. Her book club's latest pick. I let her ramble, let her fill the silence, let her work up to the real reason she'd called. Finally she got there. So, honey, I noticed the transfer didn't come through this month. I just wanted to make sure everything's okay with your bank. There it was. The reason for the warmth, the sudden interest in my life. $400 hadn't appeared in her account, and she wanted to know why. I kept my voice neutral, steady, like I was reading a report at work instead of confronting my mother about years of lies. There's no problem with my bank, Mom. There won't be any more transfers. We need to talk about something else. Silence on her end. I could almost hear her recalculating, trying to figure out what was happening. I laid out the facts. No accusations. No emotions. Just information. Dad's life insurance policy. $80,000 total. $40,000 to each daughter. Both checks cashed in April 2021. Sloan received hers. I never received mine. The funeral costs were $8,500, and I contributed $2,000 of that myself. So, where is the remaining $31,500 that belongs to me? The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10-15. Then came the defenses, one after another like she was flipping through a playbook. First, confusion. I don't know what you're talking about. That money was handled years ago. I have the policy documents, Mom. I have the beneficiary information. I called State Farm and confirmed both checks were issued and cashed. Second, deflection. Your Aunt Colleen has been filling your head with lies. She's always been jealous of me. You know that. This isn't about Aunt Colleen. This is about $31,500 that my father wanted me to have. Third, justification. There were expenses you don't know about. Settling an estate is complicated. Things got absorbed into different accounts. It wasn't intentional. I helped plan the funeral, Mom. I know what it cost. $8,500. Not $40,000. Fourth attack. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. And now you're accusing me of stealing. I didn't say the word stealing. You did. Fifth, victimhood. Her voice cracking now, tears threatening. I can't believe my own daughter would do this to me. You've always been difficult, Mariana. You've always looked for reasons to be unhappy. I let her finish. Let the performance play out. I'd seen this show before. Every holiday, every disagreement, every time anyone challenged her version of reality. The tears, the accusations, the way she flipped the script until somehow she was the victim and everyone else was the villain. When she was done, when the sniffling had subsided into wounded silence, I spoke again. I'm not trying to hurt you, Mom. I'm not trying to start a war. I just want what's mine. What Dad wanted me to have. I also told her I knew where my $400 a month had been going. Sloane's credit card payments. 3 years of me unknowingly paying my sister's bills while my mother pretended it was for property taxes. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. The silence told me everything. Then she tried one more play. Even if there was some misunderstanding about the insurance money, it's gone now. I don't have $31,000 just sitting around. That's when I used the card I had been holding. I think you do, Mom. I know about the account Hank doesn't know about. Your emergency fund. Your rainy day money. The one you mentioned to Aunt Colleen at Christmas, 2 years ago, after you'd had too much wine. Dead silence. Not confused silence. Terrified silence. I had found her real secret. The inheritance was one thing. She could spin that, explain it away, claim misunderstanding. But the secret account was different. That was her private safety net. Her exit strategy. Her proof that she was smarter than her own husband. If Hank found out about that account, he'd start asking questions. Questions about where the money came from. Questions about what else she'd been hiding. I didn't threaten her directly. I didn't have to. I said, "You have 30 days. If I receive $31,500 by December 19th, this stays between us. If I don't, I'll be contacting a lawyer on December 20th. And at some point, Hank is going to need to know where that money went. I'd rather he heard it from you than from a court document." She tried one last time. Her voice small now. Defeated. But still defiant. "You're making a huge mistake, Mariana. You're going to regret this. You're going to destroy this family." I thought about that word family. What it was supposed to mean versus what it actually meant in my life. "Maybe," I said. "But I regretted the last 3 years more." "Goodbye, Mom." Hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. But I was standing. Literally standing in my living room, leaning on my cane, looking out the window at the dark Kentucky evening. Theo came out of the bathroom with Nora wrapped in a towel. Her little face pink from the warm water. Her hair sticking up in damp tufts. "How'd it go?" he asked. I looked at my daughter. 7 weeks old when the accident happened. Now almost 4 months old. She'd never remember this. She'd never know how close we came to losing everything because of people who were supposed to love us. "Ask me in 30 days, I said. He nodded. He didn't push. That's the thing about Theo. He knows when to talk and when to just be there. He handed me Nora, and I held her against my chest. And I thought about the kind of grandmother I wanted her to have. Maybe none at all was better than one like Darlene. If this story meant something to you, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. It really does make a difference, and I'm so grateful you've stayed with me this far. Now let's finish this. The 30 days passed slowly. No calls from Darlene. No text. No Facebook messages. No emails. No communication of any kind. Complete radio silence from Louisville. I checked my mailbox every day like a kid waiting for a college acceptance letter. Except instead of hope, I felt something closer to grim satisfaction. Either the check would come or it wouldn't. Either way, I'd know exactly who my mother was. December 17th, nothing. December 18th, nothing. I started researching estate lawyers in Louisville. Found a few with good reviews. Made a list of phone numbers. I'd call on the 20th if I had to. I hoped I wouldn't have to. December 19th, 4:30 p.m. The mail came. One envelope with no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. My mother's careful looping script. The same handwriting that had signed my birthday cards for 31 years. "Dear Mariana, happy birthday. Love, Mom." Like love was just something you wrote at the bottom of a card instead of something you actually felt. I opened the envelope standing in my driveway. December wind cutting through my jacket. Inside was a check. $31,500, made out to Mariana Jenkins, signed by Darlene Pritchard. There was also a note card. 3 sentences. This money was always meant for you. There was a misunderstanding with the bank that delayed the transfer. I hope we can move past this. No apology. No admission of wrongdoing. No acknowledgement that she'd stolen my inheritance and spent 3 years lying about it. Just a story about a bank error. A hope that I'd pretend nothing had happened. A quiet expectation that we'd go back to normal now that she'd been forced to pay up. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I just folded the note card carefully, put it back in the envelope, and went inside to deposit the check. Some people might ask why I took the money. If I really believed my mother was a thief and a liar, why accept a check from her like it was a normal transaction? Why not fight for more? Demand a confession? Insist on accountability? Because $31,500 was my father's money. He worked for it. He wanted me to have it. And now I had it. That was the point. Not revenge. Not punishment. Not making my mother suffer. Just getting what was rightfully mine so I could move on with my life. I opened a $529 college savings plan for Nora. Deposited the full amount. My father never met his granddaughter. He died 2 years before she was born. But now his money would pay for her education. Someday when she's older, I'll tell her about her grandfather Raymond. How he loved his daughters. How he tried to provide for them even after he was gone. How his wishes were honored in the end, even if it took longer than it should have. That felt right. That felt like closure. Except it wasn't quite the end. December 28th, I was folding laundry. Nora napping in her crib. Theo at work. My phone rang. Louisville area code, but not my mother's number. His voice was different than the last time we'd talked. Heavier, tired. He said he needed to ask me something and he needed me to be honest with him. He explained that he'd been doing their end-of-year finances. Tax preparation, account reconciliation, all the stuff responsible people do in late December. He was going through their bank statements when he noticed a withdrawal from their joint account. $31,500. When he asked Darlene about it, she said it was for Sloan. Emergency dental surgery. Root canals, crowns, complications, expensive, but what could she do? Her daughter needed help. But Hank looked at the cleared check on the statement. The payee line didn't say Sloan Pritchard. Didn't say any dental office. Said Mariana Jenkins. Did your mother give you $31,500? He asked. And if so, why would she lie to me about it? I stood in my living room, phone pressed to my ear. Clean laundry forgotten on the couch. I had a choice to make. I could protect my mother one more time. Smooth it over, make an excuse, say it was a misunderstanding. Keep the peace like I'd always kept the peace. Or I could tell the truth. Hank, I said, I think you should ask her about my father's life insurance policy. And while you're at it, ask her about the account she has that you don't know about. Long pause. I could hear him breathing, processing, pieces clicking together in his mind. Thank you, Mariana, he said finally. I'm sorry to bother you. He hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired and sad, and relieved that I'd finally stopped lying to protect someone who'd never protected me. December 29th, through Aunt Colleen, I learned that Hank had moved out, packed a bag, went to a hotel, and called a divorce attorney. 12 years of marriage, and it took one bank statement to unravel everything. Darlene was calling everyone in the family, crying about how I'd destroyed her life, how I'd turned her husband against her, how I'd always been jealous, always difficult, always the problem child. Sloan left me a voicemail, calling me selfish and vindictive, saying I'd never be welcome in her home again. I didn't respond to any of it. There was nothing left to say. December 31st, New Year's Eve. Theo and I stayed home, ordered Thai food, watched a movie, and put Nora to bed by 9 o'clock. We weren't big party people even before the accident. Now, after everything, a quiet night at home felt like luxury. Felt like peace. At 8:47 p.m. My phone rang. Darlene Pritchard. I looked at the screen for a long moment. The name that had meant so much to me once. The person I'd spent 31 years trying to please, trying to help, trying to earn love from. The woman who'd told me to figure it out while she boarded a cruise ship. The woman who'd stolen my inheritance and lied about it for 3 years. The woman who even now was probably calling to yell at me, manipulate me, or make herself the victim one more time. I looked at Theo. He was watching me, not pushing, just present. I looked at Nora's baby monitor, the little screen showing her sleeping peacefully in her crib. I pressed decline, put the phone face down on the coffee table, and went back to my routine. The phone didn't ring again. My physical therapist, Derek, asked me something at my last appointment. He wanted to know if I'd noticed any lasting effects from the accident, any permanent changes. I told him, yes. I developed a severe allergy to guilt trips and a sudden intolerance for cruise ship photos on Facebook. He laughed and said that sounded like a full recovery to him. Think he was right. For 31 years, I tried to earn my mother's love by being useful, reliable, and generous. I sent money I couldn't afford. Drove hours to help with problems that weren't mine. Smiled through holidays where I was treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. I thought if I gave enough, eventually I'd get something back. Love that has to be bought isn't love. It's a transaction. And some transactions need to be closed for good. My leg healed. My shoulder healed. My ribs healed. And somewhere in the middle of all that recovery, something else healed too. Something that had been broken for much longer than 6 weeks. I don't know what happened to my mother's marriage. I don't know if Hank went through with the divorce. I don't know if Sloan ever paid off those credit cards or if Darlene is still posting vacation photos with inspirational captions. I stopped checking. What I do know is this. I have a husband who shows up. I have a daughter who will never wonder if she's loved. I have $31,500 in a college fund. And I have $0 going to people who don't deserve it. And I have something my mother never gave me, but my father somehow did, even from beyond the grave. I have proof that I was worth providing for. That I mattered. That someone wanted to make sure I was taken care of. That's the inheritance that really matters. Not the money, though the money is nice, but the knowledge that I was worth it. Even when my mother made me feel like I wasn't. Even when I forgot it myself. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I truly appreciate every single one of you. If you want more stories like this, they're waiting right there on your screen.